Zach Dorholt, state representative. Just waiting for a couple more folks to show up. Not that they started last night. On the 2nd.
I'm pretty impressed.
Welcome. So you had DD or trackers?
Tracker.
Oh,
Tracker as well.
Oh, this in two?
Different organizations.
Okay. Well, welcome, Zachary.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Here, all you can give you a drop is just research.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm sure we'll get a lot out of this. Yeah, this would be like.
Oh, well, thanks, Brian.
Railroad safety and planning in the St. Cloud area, and what's been some things that have gone on in St. Cloud and actually statewide. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Kleist to officially he would introduce our panel this evening.
Thank you, Chief, and welcome to St. Cloud City Hall. And I appreciate, first of all, I want to just thank folks for coming out on a beautiful Thursday evening in summer that we have such a long, extended summer in Minnesota. That for you to take your time to come into City Hall on a beautiful night like this, it shows the importance of the issue, which I think is significant. The whole issue around rail traffic and the safety, and quite frankly, just from a city perspective, you'll hear from folks on the safety piece, but just from the aspect of how important it is from a transportation piece, and how important it is from a city perspective. I want to thank Representative Dorholt for initiating this and putting this together, and I've been asked to, since it's our building, to give you a welcome. Make sure you and the city has, of course, a significant piece, and I think this is something that Representative Dorholt mentioned, and we also have a city council member, Carol Lewis, who has been also as a neighbor and a council member, has talked about the issue and also helped spearhead, getting folks together, and we're going to hear from our public safety experts on exactly that piece. So what I will do is I want to welcome folks here. I'll just maybe start with, and then we'll probably maybe just have each person maybe just go around so that you know who's up here, and each person's going to have a role, but maybe we'll start with Aaron and kind of talk about who you are, why you're here, and just a little piece, that introduction maybe would be helpful to actually hear that.
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay? I'm Erin Helsauer. I am the emergency manager for Stearns County as well as the city of St. Cloud. And I'm here to talk about how we support public safety response here in the city, and the planning and training and exercising we do before emergencies happen to better be prepared here in the city of St. Cloud.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm Bill Lund. I'm the fire chief for the city of St. Cloud. And as first responders, we would be the first responders along with law enforcement. To be honest, most of our mutual aid partners around here if a disaster or a major event happened involving the rails in the city of St. Cloud.
Joanna Dorn, Dorholt Policy Advisor for Governor Mark Dayton. I cover transportation issues and public safety issues in the governor's office, and I'm just here to hear your concerns about rail issues in St. Cloud and Stearns County.
And once again, thank you very much for coming. I'm State Representative Zachary Dorholt, and I represent District 14B, which is a lot of central St. Cloud and everything on the east side, which is where many of the concerns about the rail cars originated during over the list off stories and stories of unpleasant things regarding the rail cars. And every time one would hit the news, I get several, if not dozens, of emails from folks living on the east side who have we are doing both at the local level and the state level. And I think we made some progress, and pass it on.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Frank Hornstein, and I chair the Transportation Finance Committee in the Minnesota House of Representatives. My district is in Minneapolis. And I just really want to thank Representative Dorholt, Nick Weiss, and all the panel here for gathering to discuss a very, very important issue. And I also authored an oil and transportation safety bill that passed and was signed into law, which is, I think, a beginning to address this very important issue. We, of course, have a lot more work to do, but we made, as Representative Dorholt said, some progress this year. I want to thank Representative Dorholt for his leadership, not only on this issue, but transportation as a whole. He sits on the Transportation Policy Committee, so we've collaborated a lot together. So it's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you. My name is Carol Lewis, and I'm an at-large city council member for the city of St. Cloud. I think, Dave, you might recall the first time you and I and Mike Williams sat down after I was elected, and one of the things that we talked about was this very issue. It's been something I've been watching for quite some time. My proximity to rail lines is what makes it a priority number one for me. I want to make sure that our city has the proper response if something should happen. There have been some very serious rail disasters in Canada and in North Dakota, and I just don't want to see that type of situation happen here in the city. We had a train derailment by the Lincoln Depot. I suppose it's within the last 10 years, and it took some time to get that all straightened around, and I am very concerned about our neighborhood, our southeast side neighborhood, having to have an accident like that with the train rails the way they are right there by the Lincoln Depot. But anyway, once again, thank you to Zach and to all people involved with getting this together. It's very good. I think we need to do more of this, and hopefully by the end of summer we'll have the chief out to Riverside Park, and we'll have a southeast side neighborhood meeting regarding this very issue as well.
I want to, before I'm going to turn it to Zach to give the welcome here to a lot of welcomes in this, but I just want to, on behalf of the city, there's two things, and I have to apologize in advance if I have to have another neighborhood meeting tonight, but I want to try to get this piece in because we're in the process right now from the city of St. Cloud's perspective is we're updating our comprehensive plan, and that plan looks at the development around, including the rail. There's some of the pieces that we're looking at is where we look at development and it's great, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at making sure the North Star corridor comes to St. Cloud, and we need the additional access and rail and some development around that piece of it. But I also want to stress, we're here to talk about the safety, but St. Cloud wouldn't exist as a city if it wasn't for the railroad. And the importance of that aspect of we have as a city grown based on our transportation over the years, from the ox carts, which go date way back to the 1800s and to the Mississippi River. But it was really the railroad that created the granite industry that we're known as the Granite City, that really allowed us to the transportation and the economic development piece. And we look at it as an economic development piece significantly. The rail, the area, the safety is an important piece of it, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, but that aspect of it and the partnership that we have. So I want to encourage people from a comprehensive plan. It's a grassroots effort. Everybody who's here, if you're willing to come on a Thursday night in the middle of summer, please come to the meetings that actually set the planning of what we do in Carroll's neighborhood and all of our neighborhoods as we look at that long-range plan that we're going to be going through. Is also helpful in that respect. And I also, since this is state, federal, and local, we have, I know, some representation from Congressman Button's office here in the audience too, Nicole and Karen. So I'm assuming there's going to be a point where they'll question and answer, but this is a federal, state, and local issue. The rails don't come through here without the collaborative effort of all of us. So I'll turn it over to Zach from the kind of talk about what's going to happen here tonight, and turn it over to our public safety experts.
Let's get well. We can probably just go roll with the show. We just want to go through what the mayor kind of said, state, local level, the partnerships we're going to have made and need to continue to make together. How we're going to respond to if the worst case scenario happens, if we have the disasters, and what kind of improvements we are going to make, what kind of improvements we've been pushing the railroads forward with. So I guess I could hand it over to the chief here to go through the emergency preparedness part in Aaron Stearns County. I think that they got a wonderful presentation.
We do have contact information. This will be, this will be posted on the city website if you'd like to go and get this additional contact information. Again, I'm Bill Lund, Fire Chief for the City of St. Cloud, and to my right is Aaron Hausauer, who's the City and Stearns County Emergency Manager. Aaron and I are going to give you a brief introduction on oil train safety and the increased presence that we've all noticed in our communities. We'll talk about our local emergency planning and response efforts today, and then we're going to turn it over to Representatives Dorholt and Hornstein to talk about the recent legislation that took place in Minnesota and what they're aware of on both the national, on the national level also, and then we'll open up for any questions. We're hopeful that this meeting tonight is kind of an awareness of what's going on in our city, what we've done today to kind of prepare for that, and what we'll need our citizens to do in the event of an accident, where we need to go down the road.
Some general information. Tonight we are sharing a lot about the oil trains that we've seen coming through the city of St. Cloud, and just some information that might help to give a little bit of context specifically here to the city. So the trains that are carrying oil are the black tank trucks that are known as DOT 111. They're single tanks. If you care to look up any additional information, that DOT 111 would be important. In Benton County, coming through the city of St. Cloud, we have 9 miles of railroad. In Sherburne County, there's 2 miles of railroad. On average, throughout a week, we have 40 Burlington Northern Santa Fe trains carrying Bakken oil that come through the city of St. Cloud. Westbound trains are full of oil. Eastbound trains are empty going back to North Dakota. So just a little bit of information to put some context into play as we go here.
As far as the St. Cloud Fire Department, we are and have been for probably almost 20 years now, a 1 of 10 statewide chemical assessment hazardous materials teams. We're fortunate in St. Cloud with that designation. We have well over $500,000 of hazardous materials equipment that was purchased by the state that's located out at Fire Station 2. And we respond anywhere in a 10-county area, generally in central Minnesota. On major disasters, we would be paired up with 1, 2, 3, however many we need of the other 10 teams. So our secondary response area is actually the entire state of Minnesota. Our department and our hazardous materials team, we conduct regular training with BNSF staff, typically at the rail yard. Our staff are very familiar with the DOT 111 cars and other hazardous materials cars. We have equipment to do plugging, patching. We have equipment to do diking if there's a leak, and we practice that on a regular basis. Recently, with the information that public safety really was caught a little bit off guard with the Bakken crude oil. Typically, crude oil is not as hazardous a commodity as it was transported. The Bakken crude is fairly unique in that it's much more volatile than normal crude oil and has a much lower ignition temperature. It's more in the realm of gasoline. So we've done some specific training to prepare and train our personnel on the properties of Bakken crude oil and how to deal with a leak or a fire of that. We have, in the last few years, done a number of community disaster exercises. The most recent tabletop was a simulated train derailment on the southeast side of St. Cloud, just south of the Lincoln Depot. We had our Emergency Operations Center activated as part of that tabletop and went through what would we do. And we made some great strides in St. Cloud with a lot of other departments. Our planning and community development and our city's GIS system now makes it very easy for us to overlay evacuation corridors right on our city map and pick out which residents down to who's the property owner of that resident that we need to move or tell the shelter in place. We also have a number of resources St. Cloud can call in. No one fire department anywhere along the rail line, whether that's Minneapolis, St. Paul, or St. Cloud, or Belgrade, is going to be able to deal with a major disaster, a major incident related to the rails. In central Minnesota, we have the Central Minnesota Mutual Aid Association's 14 area departments. I think, by show of hands, everyone familiar with the Verso fire a couple of years ago. We had everybody in the Mutual Aid Association on scene very quickly, and we also called in the statewide fire mutual aid, which is a statewide system that we activate through the Department of Public Safety, the Fire Marshal's office. We actually staffed the 8 days at Verso with, I think it was 132 different fire departments across the state came to provide aid. So we have a very robust system to call additional resources in to deal with almost any incident that we would be focused with. We should also remember it's the Bakken crude that really has kind of stirred everybody's interest in this, and also the volume that it's coming. We've seen in St. Cloud a almost reversal of where oil was transported in the past and where it is now, as to how much is actually coming through on rail cars. We've seen a huge increase in the number of trains coming through our city. But there are also numbers of other hazardous materials that are transported by rail. And all of our exercise planning and emergency plans have taken what we call the all-hazard approach. It doesn't really matter why I'm evacuating a neighborhood, whether it's because of a tornado or an oil train incident. I need to know, where am I going to house these people? How am I going to reunite them with other members of their family? How are we going to track them? How are we going to feed them? How are we going to lodge them if we have to? So emergency management has really done a good job over the years. Rather than, here's our plan for an oil train incident, here's our plan for anhydrous ammonia leak, we really do our planning based on our all hazard, so we can be prepared to deal with anything. The other thing on the trains is there can be significant variance in potential scope of incidents. I mean, it can be, if we respond on, I wouldn't say a routine basis, but a few times a year over to one of the BM yards because a particular car has got a small leak coming from it, up to a major derailment where cars have spilled all of their contents, and it's either, it's not a fire, but it's a environmental issue that we have to deal with and eventual cleanup, or it could be a fire. So there's a wide range of scope that these incidents contain. And there's clearly a need for better analysis and planning on a statewide level. The two representatives are going to talk about the recent legislation that was passed. I also serve as the president of the Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association, and we were working with the legislation this year on that bill. One of the things we said was we need to look at across the state what are our current capabilities and what are the capabilities we should be doing. And then any future funding should go to address that gap. It would not do any good to say we're going to get all firefighters in the state of Minnesota trained to hazmat awareness level. My departments are already at the hazmat technician and specialist level. Other departments need that awareness training, so we need to identify that, and that's part of that legislation. And even though we have a very robust statewide mutual aid plan, in specific to hazardous materials type incidents like this, we need to do a better coordination and better planning on how we're going to coordinate all the various assets that are across the state and mobilize them in a timely manner to get them to where we need them. No one community can afford to be completely completely prepared to deal with any contingency of any type of rail incident. So we need to have our assets spread out and have that plan in place to bring those, move those assets to where we need them.
You did such a great job explaining our all-hazard plan. I won't spend too much time on that. As I said during my introduction, emergency management really looks at things on the preparedness side to begin with, to have the discussions like we are tonight. But what do we need to be considering? What do we need to have in place so that we have a plan, so that we know what it is that we're intending to do when that emergency takes place? It's meant to be a guide. It's not a step-by-step 1, 2, 3, this is what we're going to do, but it identifies the personnel that we need, the training and equipment that we need, and allows us to have a tool for measurement, so that as we practice, we can identify what went well, as well as areas that we need to continue to work on. Our all-hazard plan does identify what we may need for any host, any variety of disasters that may occur in the community. Most oftentimes we think about natural disasters, things like tornadoes or straight line wind events, flooding, that type of a thing, but we do need to be prepared for transportation emergencies as well, on the rail or at the airport, those different types of things. So our plan is supposed to be flexible to be able to accommodate any of those different types of events. When we look at the first bullet up here is that planning and preparedness, we move into response and recovery. Our goal in emergency management during response and recovery is effective in their jobs. So as the chief talks about calling for mutual aid, can we help to get a hold of those departments? Are there specific equipment that they're looking for, specific training certifications? We can help to make sure that we're finding those people and resources so that we can be as efficient as possible. The last one is mitigation, and that as well is part of what we're talking about tonight. What can we do today to lessen the risk in the future? Are there things that we can do with additional training, with education, with the public? Is it relationship development with Burlington Northern, etc.? What is it that we can do to either reduce that risk or eliminate it if at all possible? On the second bullet here, we talk about the all-hazard emergency plan. I highlighted a few of the different components of our plan. We have what we call 21 annexes, 21 functional components of our plan that we would pull in as we need them. So when I think about things like an incident on the railroad, I think about warning and public information. We need to tell you there's a problem, and we need to be able to get it to you in a variety of different methods. Direction and control is our emergency operations center. It's the place where we can all come together to be able to have access to the tools and resources we need to make good decisions and to set policy. Fire protection and hazardous materials, we've talked about. Our congregate care, sheltering, and transportation. If something terrible were to happen and we ask you to leave your home, we need to have a place for you to go. And maybe you can't leave on your own, so we have a transportation plan to help identify how we're going to provide you with that assistance to get you to a safer area. Public health and medical. What if people are injured? Are there public health components when we talk about the environmental concerns? Is it safe for you to be outdoors? This group can help us to be able to determine some of those things as well. Evacuation and traffic control. We certainly don't want to ask you to leave your home if we don't need to, but if we do and that decision has been made, how do we communicate that to you so that you understand it's an important situation and you can take that action? And lastly, we know that many people in the community have animals, and we know that if you can't take your animal, you might not be willing to leave your home. So we have a plan in place as well for when you evacuate your home and you bring your dog or your cat with you, we can help you to take care of them once you're gone from your home as well. So a little bit of insight into what we do in emergency management, some of the different topics that we consider for any type of event, but specifically tonight, some of the things that might apply to rail safety. The last, again, just a reminder that we support public safety. We are not a response department, but rather we support the needs of the community through a variety of different ways following emergency situations.
Okay, we're going to join the panel up here, and we'll let Representative Dorholt and Marstein talk about the recent legislation.
We'll hand it over to Representative Hornstein. Both of us serve on the Transportation Policy Committee, and he's also chair of the Transportation Finance. This was definitely a hot topic in St. Paul this year. And there is a handout with some research out there that going through, and I wanted to speak about Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Representative Dorholt, and it's just wonderful again to be here. This is a great opportunity for me as the chair of the committee to hear directly from citizens who are impacted by this. So I'm really looking forward to your questions and the discussion. So I'll try to keep my comments brief. Both as Councilmember Lewis and Chief Bund had mentioned, the real issue here and why this has been such an issue of concern throughout the state, it's really a statewide issue. It's people in the metro area concerned, of course here in St. Cloud, because you're all looking at that corridor coming directly from North Dakota. There's a lot of concerns, Moorhead, Minnesota, up north, down in southeast, everywhere we go. This has been really a very central issue on people's minds. And again, as the council member in chief said, the reason is that this oil from North Dakota is particularly volatile, it's particularly dangerous. And it's not only the nature of the crude that they're getting from North Dakota, it's the fact that it's a result of the fracking process. There's a lot of chemicals that are mixed into it. You combine that with oil tanker cars that have been known now to be really substandard in terms of carrying this oil or phasing them out in Canada. There's also some rulemaking process where it's envisioned that they'll be phased out here in the United States. But the problem is until that phase out comes, they are in our communities and on our rails. And they're just not up to snuff in terms of carrying this cargo that is this hazardous. So you kind of combine the fact that you've got this dangerous product being transported in these cars that are not up to snuff and really have potential for a problem. And as was mentioned, we had 47 fatalities in Quebec last year, just about a little over a year ago. We had a huge explosion in North Dakota, just 20 miles from the Minnesota border, back at the end of the year. So these are occurring. These accidents are occurring too frequently in my mind. And so that's really what prompted this response we have at the state legislature. As was mentioned, this is really a shared local, state, and federal responsibility. Much of the legislation governing rail safety is at the federal level. So we really went through a process, hearing process in my committee. What can we do at the state level? What's appropriate for us to do at the state level that would help protect our communities and keep our communities safe? So in our Transportation Finance Committee, we had 2 full days of hearings. We wanted to hear from state agencies, we wanted to hear from citizens. Again, the first responders, the firefighters were really instrumental and helpful in terms of identifying some of the gaps in public safety as it relates to this. There were 2 things I'll never forget about those hearings. The first is when Mona Doman, the Commissioner of Public Safety, said that when she travels around the state, this issue keeps people up at night, keeps the emergency responders up at night in terms of how to deal with it. And that was very impactful. And then MnDOT told us that this is a whole new ballgame. That they have some say over rail safety and freight rail, and they felt that because of the nature of this product, that this was a whole new ballgame in terms of how to respond. So you have a summary in the document that says House Research, Minnesota House of Representatives, CFL Caucus Research. I'm just going to very quickly go through some of the highlights of the legislation and what it does. And there, of course, there's much more that needs to be done and many more resources to put into this, but this was a really important start. And again, we've had state agencies working together on this, as well as citizens and public responders. And even the rail companies actually were very helpful in terms of helping us to craft this legislation. So on the transportation end of things, we have some money allocated for MnDOT to study and improve rail grade crossings. Now I understand here in St. Cloud you had an accident at a grade crossing. And we know that there's a lot of potential where traffic comes into contact with trains. There is really potential to have problems. So we want rail grade crossing safety. We allocated money for that. We also increased the number of track inspectors. There are 4,500 miles of track in the state of Minnesota, one state rail inspector. And so now we have 4, or up to 4. And so that's really important. And one of those inspectors will be able to actually inspect the trains and their operating systems, which are really important. Again, because they're carrying this very hazardous materials, we have to make sure that our tracks are inspected. We now have both from rail and pipeline companies. We really include pipelines in this this too, because there's real problems with pipelines and potentials for spills and accidents and big problems with pipelines as well. So rails and pipelines are both problematic. The pipelines are carrying some of the same oil. They're also carrying tar sands oil. And so there's a big pipeline project in the state, and it's now being discussed by by the various state levels, agencies, Public Utilities Commission, et cetera. So we do have pipeline companies and the railroads contributing to a first responder safety account. And MnDOT is now, as the chief mentioned, studying what are the gaps. What are the gaps in our emergency response that we have to identify? What are the resources that are needed? How can first responder agencies coordinate better? Chemical action teams, et cetera, along these oil runs. So we are putting more resources into first responders and public safety. I think we need to do more, but we have to start, and I think it's really important that the private sector contribute to this account, and they are. And then finally, there was some mention about what happens after there's an accident in terms of not only putting out the fire, but there's oftentimes a lot of environmental damage. This oil can spill into water, surface water, wetlands, etc. And we have included in the legislation very specific times by which the railroads have to come in and clean up this mess. What we found when oil spills, it's so problematic for the environment around it. It's those first few hours after a spill that are critical. Some of the biggest oil disasters have taken place because there just wasn't a quick response. And so we have some provisions in the bill that the Pollution Control Agency helped out with to increase the response time in case there's oil and spill. So let me just conclude by thanking you for coming. We have a lot of work to do. One of the things that strikes me and that I think is really important as we talk about this issue moving forward is that the National Transportation Safety Board, which is a federal agency, came out with some recommendations earlier this year. And they were very concerned about these trains coming through densely populated areas. They felt that, again, because of all the things we're talking about, the nature of this cargo, the problems with these oil tankers, that we should be doing our best to route these trains around areas where we have dense populations, such as St. Cloud. And you are really here at the center of this issue because these trains are coming from North Dakota, they're entering Minnesota in the Red River Valley, they're coming through St. Cloud and going down to the Twin Cities, to refineries to the east and south. And so this is really, really a critical crossroads here in St. Cloud. And I'm so pleased that the chief and members of the city council, the mayor, and your local state representative are paying attention to this issue and are discussing it. So I look forward to our question and answer here.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of reiterate my concern, I've been envisioning the rail line I was surprised that there were 9 miles of Benton County. But I don't know that there is along the rail line, I don't know that there are a lot of populated areas. But once you come into St. Cloud, then you start getting more and more population and get into my neighborhood. And like I say, there's a very serious issue that I guess we probably have to look at our federal legislators for help with that curve right by Lincoln Depot, because we did have, like I say, a development there in the last 10 years. And so I'd like to see if we can't somehow get that bank curve down a little bit, bring it a little more straight, so that we don't have a rail car that has a lot of oil in it falling over on Lincoln Depot, or for heaven's sake, on the first fuel bank. I don't even want to think about that. I mean, that would be talk about a disaster. That would be one. So, but anyway, I guess I'm just I've talked to some neighbors about what our response is, and like I say, I'm hoping that we can get a neighborhood meeting put together so that at least we start talking about it amongst ourselves and know that the city has a plan and that we need to be, aware and pay attention and do what has been asked of us to do so that we minimize the damage and the loss of life if there's some horrid disaster that happens.
Joanna Dorholt from the governor's office.
I just wanted to, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I just the governor would want me to say how important he views railroad safety. The work that was accomplished this last legislative session, he appreciated the opportunity to partner with Representative Hornstein and other members of the legislature to get that legislation passed. And he used it as a good first step to address some of the safety issues that we're seeing across the state. And also continue to work with the legislature and the community members throughout the state to learn more about what the state can do, what the state role can be to continue to address this really important issue. And our state agencies have been very busy implementing the law because they view this as such a high priority. And two of the rail inspectors have already been hired and started. And the Department of Public Safety is very busy getting their the training that will be provided to first responders statewide getting that launched this fall. So they're very hard at work this summer. Appreciate your questions and raising the issues so we can.
I guess I would welcome if representatives from Congressman Bachman's office have any prepared stuff or questions. If you have anything specific, I'd like to. Yeah.
My name is Nicole Hauser with Congressman Michelle Bachman's office. Thank you. We actually don't have a statement here, but we are here to listen and kind of hear the concerns of the community. The oil issue is something that we are keeping an eye on, and it's something that is probably in the federal arena. So we're just here to listen, and we'll be here afterwards as well.
One from, to follow up on what spoke the chief and Aaron said. From the city's perspective and the challenge, and I appreciate having this as the state and federal folks because, quite frankly, the city can't create any type of different routing or, the rail. And I'm really interested in the concept of rerouting rail around population areas. That could certainly increase the traffic flow on 25th and some other areas. So that'd be great. And that actually would be something I'd be very interested in that aspect of things. But we're, again, as I mentioned earlier about the historical aspect of rail, we're going to have rail, but our folks and Aaron and emergency management, Bill and his folks, we should be very pleased in our area and proud of the folks. The amount of training, and this isn't all of a sudden because there's the Bakken area opened up and we just started thinking about trains coming through and we're going to be safe. We spent a lot of time, I've been married 8.5 years, and way before that even, dealing with issues of spills and public safety and how you handle that. We do a lot of exercises. I just want to assure the public we don't, just new things don't happen and we decide to, if there are a lot of exercises that take place from a public response aspect, scenarios of things that you wouldn't hope never happen. But they're trained, and the fact that we put a lot of commitment in that training aspect of things, and Bill being, Chief being, the aspect of the mutual aid. I mean, they can tell you in this area, there's not a fire that happens in a 40-mile radius in St. Cloud's not a major park. And because we have folks that, and again, in this area, I just want to assure folks in every neighborhood, we put a lot of emphasis. I can tell you in my office, there's a book that Aaron, you bring over that's about this thick, that every single scenario of everything that can happen, from this or any other disasters, that we have exercises on a regular basis. We've had, unfortunately, some situations where we've actually had beyond the exercise to deal with, but they train in a lot of ways. So from that perspective, we have, we continue to have those things. We need help in that respect when it comes to state legislation. And some of the biggest issue from a city perspective is to make sure that our department and other departments that are oftentimes much smaller than ours have the ability and the funds to train people for those types of disasters. That I think is probably the most critical piece in that piece. But federal and state legislation, we like the balance of things. We can't shift all of this, to roads. We can talk. We have a river here too that has, we don't have the barge traffic here, but we're concerned about what happens on other parts of the river with moving materials and hazardous things. So anything in that perspective, I think, would be helpful.
Actually, Mayor, the study that Thank you. Actually, Mayor, the study that the Department of Public Safety is working on that will be ready at the beginning of next year, 2015, at the beginning of our next legislative session, talks about oil transportation through all modes, including trucks and water. So even though it's primarily rail and pipeline, just Representative Dorholt, I can just make one more quick comment before we open it up. I know we're focused on the safety issues, but there's two other concerns that are have been brought up, which I think are really important as it relates to this whole oil train issue. And that is, we've been hearing a lot from agricultural interests throughout the state, where they can't get goods to market because there are so many oil trains that are at the end of September down in St. Paul with the Commerce and Transportation Committees, because this is really interfering now with our commerce, particularly in the agriculture sector. You're here along the Amtrak line, and I don't know if folks are aware of this, but there have been significant and frequent delays on the Empire Builder service. This is very devastating for Amtrak, which already has a very low budget, but why take the train if it's going to be late? We're not just talking about a half hour now. Some of these delays have been 7, 8, 9 hours going in both directions. And we've also had some, and Mayor, I am with you. We're going to get that North Star up here, St. Cloud, but we got to get that North Star train up here to St. Cloud and it won't be delayed by oil trains. And we've had that problem periodically from time to time. Again, it's the same corridor that runs through St. Cloud. So again, this isn't the safety issues. There's commerce issues. There's interference with other transportation modes. So it's a really big issue. With that, I'll hand it back over to Representative Dorholt.
Sure. The other one is it stops some shipments of coal to the Sherco plant, and Xcel Energy will also have some frustrations with that. So we'll go to open discussion, questions, comments, concerns.
Who has priority as far as the trains? I mean, why the oil trains versus the grain or the Amtrak? I mean, what's the level of priority for the trains? I said, who gets to go and who gets to wait? Amtrak's last.
So BNSF does control the rails here, and they have agreements such as with the North Star Link. These agreements haven't always been met. The agreements with Amtrak obviously haven't been met with the 4 to 6 hour delays. So BNSF does have the right of way. They call the shots. They have agreements in place. They haven't been the best at honoring them, which is why we're also here a little pressure on that.
And I appreciate the question. We've got to really keep in mind just the sheer volume that has just grown exponentially just over the last couple of years. We have 50 trains a week going through the state of Minnesota. And these aren't just trains with a couple of cars. They're called unit trains, and they often have 100 tankers attached to them. So you go to the Northtown Yard in Minneapolis. I visited that last week. And just in the course of an hour, there were 4 different oil trains coming through that switching yard. And so they are very long trains, and they are running frequently. And my guess is that this is going to increase as the oil production increases.
It might be easier just maybe the microphone's facing that direction, so it might, just from an orderly aspect of coming up. Yep, it's on, Judy. That's right.
I have two questions. One is interstate commerce is governed at the federal level. Explain what you can do at the state level and what's got to be done at the federal level. And secondly, who's paying for all this? Do the pipeline companies and the railroad pay for these costs to prepare us for this kind of disaster?
Well, that's a great question, and we did quite a bit of work on this last session to see what exactly we could do at the state level. And really our bill responded to that. We can fund rail grade crossings with state bonding money, which we did this year. We can increase support for public safety response. We can increase the number of inspectors. We can require that spills be cleaned up faster. But I feel that, again, these companies are making a lot of money off of this oil. That is no question. And they should be sharing the responsibility with the public sector for training these first responders at a minimum, but obviously also cleaning up any messes that they make. So again, we've assessed for the next 3 years pipeline companies 1.25 million and railroad companies 1.25 million. It's not a lot of money compared to what they're making, but at least we've opened the door to the concept that there should be shared responsibility between the public and private sectors on this.
Pretty loud. Can I just follow up on that?
Yes.
What do you mean assessed? Does that mean they're actually going to pay it, or does that mean
Yeah,
you want them to pay
yeah.
it, or like they agree that they owe you the money?
It's state law,
Okay.
and I had a meeting with the Department of Public Safety just last week, and they are starting to build the railroads for this. But I am, and I think all of us here should be very interested, and I know the chief is, to see this study that's going to really identify the gaps that exist in our emergency response to this. And I learned a term last session, low frequency, high impact. So this isn't, while there have been far too many of these disasters, like in Quebec, they've been deadly, and like in North Dakota, they've been quite fortunate that didn't take place just a quarter mile away, which there have been a lot of injuries and fatalities. I mean, we're talking about thousands of sticks of dynamite equivalent going up in 1 second. We have to be prepared because, again, while it's low frequency, because of the nature of the Spargo, it could really have a devastating impact. So, yes.
This U.S. DOT proposes new rules. That's only been proposed. How long would it take for any of them to be enacted?
Well, so this is a really good question, and this is something that people can participate in. There is a 60-day comment period. There's a proposal, and I have to say the federal government, I have mixed feelings about the response so far. In the last 6 months, we've seen all kinds of directives because they're scrambling. They understand that this is a huge, huge issue that affects people all over the country. It's not just Minnesota. There's oil trains up and down, going to the East Coast. They're in California. They're in Washington State. So this is really a national issue. So they've decided that we need some new, up-to-date rules to govern this. And one of their proposals is to phase out these DOT 111 cars, but that's over a period of 2 years. I think they should be phased out now. So this is a rulemaking process, and we have had some commentary that members of Congress that are weighing in on this, and Congressman Walz in particular has been pretty vocal about this, and it's on a bipartisan basis. We've had both Republican and Democratic members of Congress that have been speaking out on this because it affects people in their communities. So I would like to see tougher rules from the federal government, but that's really up to us. And you can bet there'll be people on the other side of this issue that don't want to have towing. I think we need to weigh in, and I'm glad there's people from Congressman Bachman's office here as well.
The federal rulemaking process takes about 18 months from the beginning to end. So I don't know where they are in the process, but that's just kind of a rule of thumb.
They just announced this a
But
couple weeks
something
ago.
was decided, how long before it would be enacted?
Well, the council member's right. We are talking about at least, my understanding is a couple of years process for making these administrative rules.
Okay, because I live 7 miles from the railroad tracks, and I'm already 70 years old, so I'm not sure that this would have you in my life. Not.
Well, that's one of the things we
Probably
can.
not that.
Well, that is precisely one of the things that we ought to be communicating to our federal delegation. Is let's expedite this rulemaking and let's make these rules tough.
Okay, now, it talks about high hazard chemical trains that's carrying 20 or more tankers. That would apply to at least half of the trains that go by our us. So, and with tankers, you don't always know what's in them because they're not the only ones I've seen labeled are the KO.
Well, I would love to hear the chief and emergency response.
Yeah, well,
This is one of the things that bothers me the most. We don't have what's called the right to know. Back in the 1980s, there was a federal law passed called the Community Right to Know Act. I think there's something, emergency response, blah, 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 community right to know. And this came about because a lot of people were living in neighborhoods that may have had a foundry or some factory that was producing toxic emissions, and no one really knew. You couldn't legally find out what these pollutants were that were literally in people's backyards and in their neighborhoods. And the railroad industry and the transportation industry got an exemption from that. And so I view that as a huge loophole that needs to be closed. And I don't know to what extent this information is shared with you.
Well, there's those white tanker cars now that I see quite often with a black band around the center of them. And does anybody know? Those are oil tankers.
Typically the oil tankers are the black tank cars, but every car on a train is required to be placarded, and there's a national and international placarding system. And actually, the railroads have done a better job of making their consist, they call them, which is a listing of every car on that train and its cargo from the engine to what used to be the caboose, available to public safety. Part of the some of the issues with making that information available to the general public is concerns about people that want to do harming, want to cause problems. But all hazardous material that's shipped in the quantities we're talking, the thresholds are very, very high in the United States, are required to be placarded and labeled.
And one answer to the question is that the regulations for the new rail cars that will have to be phased in within the next 2 years here. So to upgrade the actual cars and oil, that's part of the federal law, so we have 2 years to make those upgrades.
Yeah, I've seen some oil cars that look new, but maybe they're just new. It's hard to tell, but I guess that's about all I have, except that I see trains, quite often I sit outside and I count
appreciate your concern that from the organization you represent to bring here today. And we are here to talk about safety, and I'm sure most people in Minnesota would agree that that money would have better been spent on these safety issues. But we don't know exactly how we're going to implement all this. State, federal, local, and as far as that office building was something that's been kicked down the can for a decade. If you want to talk more about it, I have another meeting Saturday morning, 8:15 a.m. at the Woody Senior Center, and I'm happy to chat with you more about that.
I would also like to clarify, I don't represent any organization.
I have a question with the additional cars coming through, rail cars, and they're really long trains, it seems. I guess, ease my concern. I know folks are on top of this, but is there concern about emergency responders getting to a fire or some kind of medical situation? You know, every minute matters. And I just don't know if the emergency responders get any kind of indication when these trains are coming through. How does that work?
We're not actually notified when every train's coming, as it's been talked about here today. It doesn't take any small delay at any part of this system across about 6 states can throw trains being backed up 3 states over. So there's not a set time where we can expect that. We do, as I'm sure the police department does, have multiple routes to get to places and accesses. We can bypass the tracks on Highway 23, we get under, and Station 3 on the southeast side of St. Cloud. If it was going, needed to cross the tracks, they would notify us that there's a train, and we would send an engine from Station 1 to cover. So we are aware, and really that's with the Highway 15 overpass, 9th Avenue, the underpass on 9th Avenue and Division, getting around St. Cloud. The trains don't delay us significantly. Now, I would say that when I'm over at Val's to get my lunch, and I'm coming back on the St. Germain, sometimes my fries are cold.
And the chief's got one of those things that changes the lights, but I know he's not using it way to get to balance. By the way, the train stopped our parade too, you know. You can't go by the essentially.
And that is a big piece of the conversation, especially when it comes to commuter rail. And I've heard numbers ranging everything. If we wanted to do a parallel track from St. Cloud to, or if BNSF or whoever wanted to do a parallel track, if they can, we certainly so know for sure that we're working on that. From say from here to Big Lake, everything from 110 million to 2 billion. So those are the numbers that I that would just be to put a parallel track from St. Cloud to Big Lake. So we're going to get some more definite, get some legislation in place that's going to give us some more definite numbers of how much that would cost, and conversations with BNSF on how they'd like to help us do their increased traffic and delaying people moving through the state.
And it's just not here either. I've traveled a lot on rail on the east, that is the Santa Fe and for St. you know, all over the country. Most civilized nations have good rail systems.
In St. Cloud,
Passenger rail.
our rails are owned by BNSF. In fact, even the Empire Builder, Amtrak leases the station that's here in town, but BNSF, and It's been always a challenge as we deal with the BNSF. Because we get this the city question that we get the most is, you know, and I mentioned 25th earlier, is, you know, can't the city prevent some way to all those trains that stop and they change tracks in some of the urban areas? And again, this is going back to the earlier thing I said about the commerce aspect. There are a lot of businesses. We all want stuff, and it's got to get here somehow. It gets here by the rail or by truck. And you know that's the aspect of it. It's the multimodal approach aspect of things, and from the city's perspective, the safety is paramount in what we do, because we want to make sure that residents are protected. And the safety piece is also when we have. I was talking to Zach earlier. The issue, you know, I get the biggest question I have from the rail is the amount of trains that are coming through. Is why do they blow those horns? So we have quiet zones, and when we do quiet zones, and you know, the city does all of this work, which actually is really good because it creates the safety aspect around the crossing. In Lincoln Depot, for example, we created that quiet zone that prevented folks who were just completely avoiding all of the safety measures that we have and going through that. But it creates a safety area that we have to pay BNSF to do. And then when we're done with all of that, they don't have to not silence the whistles. They can silence the whistles if they want. They'll do it for the most part because we've gone through all of this effort. But we pay and they do the work, and so they're right up to all of that aspect of the rail. And again, from a city, we want to make sure that we still get goods and do all of those things, but a balanced effort. There's just a lot going on the rail. You know, as one individual, utilizing the pipeline and getting a pipeline would be a significant thing to reduce that. You know, I hesitate to never say don't put any more trucks on the road because we need lanes to do that. But you know, we need new tracks, we need new lanes, and we need a pipeline. You need a combination of those efforts. Our perspective is just make sure all of those things are safe.
Mayor, we with Representative Dorholt, we are adding a third lane a little to the south of here on 94. And, you know, the I-94 coalition, you know, did a great job, and I heard a lot from St. Cloud, the local elected officials about this, and again, Representative Dorholt was very instrumental in that. So between I-94 and North Star, we're hoping to connect St. Cloud, and it's a lot faster.
Give us another rail, throw a pipeline in there.
Okay, well,
bring that lane all the way.
Well, there's a big controversy about the routing of this sandpiper pipeline, so they don't want it up north. Tell me you're interested.
So if you want to fly to Chicago, it's really easy to go to airport as well.
Yeah, airport. Thanks.
If anybody has other questions, I will be around after this if you have any more.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you to the City of St. Cloud for hosting us and letting us use their facility. Appreciate everybody being here.
Gotta get llamas ready for the 4-H show. Hi. Girlfriend's sister, Tom. Go ahead. Sorry. Yep.
Heading home. Heading home.
Well, they just keep them at
You what? Exhausted. I was up in Wisconsin last night. Were you on a trip? No, like summer camp I used to work for was their last day, so they needed someone to drive a big 26-foot U-Haul. So
they have
my afternoon yesterday and my... Wow, what a guy. Yeah, a lot of driving today. Yeah. Where in Wisconsin? Burnett County, so like 2 hours. Not that bad.
So 11 a.m.
Almost a straight shot on 35, which is nice. Yeah, that's nice.
For that one after work, but I have to help get ready, so thanks so much. Yeah. Details on the Saturday thing?
No,
I just looked on his website.
That's the first thing I heard. That's the first time I've ever heard of it. Let's soon. I'm like tempted to ask him. I don't know if I would go or if Rolo would go. It's so early to Yeah. Well, I gotta be at the county fair at 10, and the county fair should be pretty busy. I assume on Saturday. Should be a good day to talk to people.
Your Governor Obamacare button.
Yeah.
That was a big day.
Some people are super confused and think that we're like pro Dayton at first, and then they like read more into it and they're like, yeah, it's kind of funny.
Well,
hey, do you like how you like accused them of being part of an organization? What? Yes. Take it easy, D-Coach. Can you let me know what it's like?
What'd you do?
I got hit by a pickup truck.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Gotta look both ways.
Are you doing something smart?
Huh?
Are you doing something smart?
Yeah, I was in Eden Prairie doing some door knocking.
Oh, no, even worse.
And I was walking down a driveway, and there was a truck coming. I was like waiting. I was like, oh, he's gonna make a turn. I'm like standing on the far like right side of the road, like back a little bit, and he was like waving to his neighbor, and didn't look, and then turned into the wrong lane,
Oh.
and then hit me.
No. Wow, you are devoted. Good for
Yeah,
you.
something like that.
For the team.
Yeah, I was very shocked.
Yes, well, I would be too.
Yeah.
You keep waiting for him to do something. Yeah.
I was like, look at that. Oh, here it comes. This is it.
You know, but you're one of the few that can. It's such a great story now.
Yeah, I'm just glad that my hand broke the fall, not just my head.
Oh my gosh, no kidding. See, I've broken myself many times, but it's usually I tripped over myself.
Oh, sure. This one locked?
Nothing
No,
as
heavy.
glorious as being hit by a...
Yeah, you know, at least isn't, I don't have to tell like a stupidity story. Like, I was rock climbing and I didn't fasten my whatever. And
Mine is, I fell down the stairs. Yeah.
well, okay.
Sure, sounds good.
You guys talking about the Senate office bill?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I mean, I don't know anyone who's really happy about it, at least not. I mean, the thing is, they're part and not even all 76 senators are going to be in.
Yeah, and I mean,
$90 million. Build a school. Build something. Anything but a luxury office building for politicians.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I'm glad you guys are here. You know, it'd be one thing, you know, if they would like acknowledge it, but all like CFL state reps have all been like, well, people want it. We want to push that through. Yeah, what findings?
was at another thing, and they said, well, we talked about getting, an existing building in downtown St. Paul. And we're like, and people were like, yeah, it sounds like it. They're like, and then they're like, yeah, but then we didn't have to drive to talk to other people.
What?
Oh, God forbid you have to commute for 5 minutes from the capital to downtown St. Paul, that long 1.5 mile drive.
Grab a bike or go for a walk.
Yeah, or ride that light rail. I got a million options. Yeah, there's the light rail, a cab, a bus, a car, a bike. Yeah. Or that, or Skype, or go to a meeting, or any of that stuff. Yeah. Nice talking to you. What? You're obviously here with some organization.
I'm like, no, actually, not at all.
Yeah, like, I want to be like, yeah, Mike and I went to school together. Sorry we were like dogs before. Is that not okay?
We're actually like kind of friends, but
Yeah, is that a problem? You think we're like in cahoots together?
yeah, are we planning on setting up a secret, section? We're gonna kick out all the Democrats and St. Cloud.
So should I just follow you to the county fair? How far is it from here to the? I don't think so.
We'll probably have to find some guy.
Okay.